Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, was Queen Victoria's youngest son and one of the most fragile figures in her large royal family. Born with hemophilia, he lived his 30 years in constant awareness of his mortality, yet managed to marry, father children, and establish a ducal legacy that would outlast him by decades. But while Leopold's own life ended early, cut short by a brain hemorrhage in 1884, his children lived on into a rapidly changing world, one that would reshape royal identity, loyalty, and legacy in unexpected ways. One child remained firmly within the British royal orbit, becoming a long-serving and trusted figure across the empire. Princess Alice of Albany would marry into the Teck family, witness the transformation of European monarchy, and serve the crown through 2 world wars and into the television age. The other began life as a British prince, but ended it as a controversial German duke, stripped of his British titles and remembered for choices that permanently altered how history judged him. Prince Charles Edward of Albany inherited not just his father's ducal title, but also the complex dynastic obligations of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. His journey from British prince to German ruler to political pariah represents one of the most dramatic reversals of fortune in modern royal history. This documentary follows, in strict chronological order, what happened to Prince Leopold's 2 children, from birth and upbringing to careers, marriages, descendants, and long-term historical legacy. Each life is completed in full before moving to the next, offering a clear, factual account of how the Albany line evolved after Leopold's death. Princess Alice Mary Victoria Augusta Pauline was born at Windsor Castle on 25th February 1883, during one of the coldest winters in recent memory. Her arrival was greeted with particular joy by Queen Victoria, who had grown increasingly protective of her youngest son Leopold following his numerous health crises. The princess was named Alice in honor of her late aunt Alice, Grand Duchess of Hesse, who had died 4 years earlier, a choice that reflected the Queen's continuing grief for her daughter. As the first child of Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, Princess Alice held the rank of a granddaughter of the sovereign, entitled to the style of Her Royal Highness. Her position within the extended royal family was both privileged and precarious, given her father's uncertain health. Leopold's hemophilia had already manifested in several dangerous bleeding episodes, making the continuation of his line a matter of considerable concern to the Queen. The birth announcement was carefully worded to acknowledge both celebration and caution. Court officials noted the princess's apparent good health while remaining diplomatically silent about the hereditary concerns that shadowed the Albany line. Princess Alice's arrival marked the beginning of what would prove to be a brief but significant generation of the Albany dukedom. On 28 March 1884, when Princess Alice was barely 13 months old, her father, Prince Leopold, died suddenly at the Villa Nevada in Cannes. He had suffered a brain hemorrhage following a fall, the kind of seemingly minor accident that proved fatal for those with his condition. The news reached England by telegram, devastating Queen Victoria and leaving Princess Alice effectively fatherless before she could form lasting memories of him. Leopold's death created an immediate dynastic crisis. His widow, Princess Helen of Waldeck and Pyrmont, was 7 months pregnant at the time, carrying what would prove to be the future Duke of Albany. The household at Claremont House suddenly found itself in mourning while simultaneously preparing for the birth of an heir who would inherit his father's titles posthumously. For Princess Alice, her father's death meant her earliest years would be shaped entirely by maternal influence and royal tradition rather than paternal guidance. She would grow up knowing Leopold only through portraits, stories, and the carefully preserved memory cultivated by Queen Victoria. The princess's understanding of her father would be filtered through the Victorian ideal of martyred youth rather than lived experience. Princess Helen of Waldeck and Pyrmont faced the daunting prospect of raising 2 young children while navigating the complex expectations of British royal widowhood. As a German princess who had married into the British royal family, her position required careful balance between grief, duty, and the practical necessities of child-rearing. Queen Victoria, despite her own overwhelming mourning, took an active interest in her grandchildren's upbringing. Helen established a household routine at Claremont House that emphasized education, proper deportment, and awareness of royal responsibility. She was determined that both children should understand their dual heritage, British through their father and German through her own lineage. This cultural duality would prove significant as European politics shifted in the coming decades. The princess managed her reduced household with careful attention to both economy and dignity. Royal widows were expected to maintain appropriate standards while avoiding ostentation, a balance that Helen navigated successfully. Her approach to motherhood combined Germanic thoroughness with British reserve, creating an environment where both children could develop their individual characters while remaining conscious of their royal obligations. Princess Alice's early childhood unfolded within the highly regulated atmosphere of Queen Victoria's court. Regular visits to Windsor Castle and Balmoral ensured she remained connected to the broader royal family, though her upbringing was necessarily more intimate than that of her cousins born to reigning monarchs. The Queen took particular interest in Alice's education, insisting on regular reports from her governesses. The princess's daily routine included French and German language instruction, piano lessons, watercolor painting, and the careful study of history and geography. Her education was designed to prepare her for the social responsibilities of royal life while ensuring she possessed the cultural accomplishments expected of a Victorian lady. Religious instruction emphasized both personal piety and understanding of the Church of England's role in national life. Childhood friendships were carefully managed within the constraints of royal protocol. Princess Alice played with selected children from aristocratic families, always under supervision and with constant awareness of social hierarchy. These early relationships would later prove valuable as she navigated adult social responsibilities within the British establishment. The shadow of hemophilia hung over Princess Alice's childhood, though its specific implications for her own health remained unclear during her early years. As medical understanding of hereditary conditions was limited, the family's approach to her health was cautiously protective without being restrictive. Queen Victoria was acutely aware that Alice might carry the condition, potentially passing it to future children. Princess Alice's own health appeared robust, but the family maintained careful observation of any signs of unusual bleeding or bruising. Her activities were subtly monitored to avoid unnecessary risks, though she was not subjected to the extreme restrictions that characterize the upbringing of hemophiliac males. The princess grew up understanding that her future marriage choices would require careful consideration of genetic implications. The medical uncertainty surrounding hemophilia inheritance meant that Princess Alice's eventual role as a carrier could only be confirmed through future pregnancies. This knowledge influenced family discussions about suitable marriages, though such considerations remained largely unspoken during her childhood years. The princess would later demonstrate remarkable resilience in facing these hereditary challenges. As Princess Alice entered adolescence in the late 1890s, her position within the royal hierarchy became increasingly defined. She was neither close enough to the throne to attract intense scrutiny, nor distant enough to enjoy complete freedom. This middle ground provided opportunities for a relatively normal social development while maintaining appropriate royal dignity. Her coming of age coincided with Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee celebrations in 1897, when Alice was 14. The extensive festivities provided her first significant exposure to large-scale royal ceremonial, experiences that would prove valuable preparation for her future role. She observed the careful orchestration required for successful royal events and began to understand the performative aspects of monarchy. The princess's adolescent years were marked by increasing awareness of marriage expectations. Royal families across Europe were interconnected through carefully planned alliances, and Alice's eventual marriage would need to serve both personal happiness and dynastic advantage. Her education expanded to include deeper study of European royal genealogies and the political implications of various potential matches. On 10th of February 1904, Princess Alice married Prince Alexander of Teck at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. The groom was a younger brother of the future Queen Mary, making this alliance particularly advantageous for maintaining close ties with the direct line of succession. Alexander's position as a younger son meant he would likely pursue a military or diplomatic career suitable for supporting a royal wife. The Teck family's background combined royal blood with relative financial modesty, creating partners who understood both aristocratic expectations and practical limitations. Alexander's parents, the Duke and Duchess of Teck, had navigated similar challenges in balancing royal status with limited resources. This experience proved valuable as Alice and Alexander established their own household. The wedding ceremony was relatively modest by royal standards, reflecting both the couple's position as younger members of their respective families and the evolving nature of royal celebration. King Edward VII, who had succeeded Queen Victoria 3 years earlier, used the occasion to emphasize family unity and continuity. Princess Alice's marriage marked her transition from dependent granddaughter to active participant in royal family responsibilities. The outbreak of World War I 1914 created unexpected complications for Princess Alice and her husband. As Prince Alexander of Teck, he bore a German title that became politically problematic as anti-German sentiment intensified across Britain. The royal family faced increasing pressure to demonstrate unquestionable loyalty to Britain by abandoning Germanic titles and associations. In 1917, following King George V's decision to change the royal family name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor, Prince Alexander relinquished his German titles and adopted the surname Cambridge, later accepting the title Earl of Athlone. Princess Alice thus became the Countess of Athlone, a change that reflected the broader transformation of royal identity during the war. The title change represented more than administrative convenience. It symbolized the definitive break with German connections that had characterized British royalty for centuries. For Princess Alice, who carried both British and German heritage through her parents, this transition required careful navigation of family loyalties while maintaining public support for the war effort. As the Earl of Athlone's wife, Princess Alice assumed the responsibilities of a senior royal figure supporting her husband's official duties. The Earl pursued a successful military career, eventually becoming a field marshal, while Alice developed expertise in the ceremonial and charitable work expected of royal wives. Her approach emphasized dignity, reliability, and genuine engagement with public service. The couple's household operated on the principle of efficient royal representation without excessive expenditure. Princess Alice became skilled at managing the complex logistics of royal engagements while maintaining the personal warmth that made such occasions meaningful for participants. Her German background, now diplomatically minimized, contributed to her effectiveness in international situations. Alice's role expanded gradually as she demonstrated competence and dedication. Senior royals recognized her ability to represent the family appropriately across various social and official contexts. Her marriage had successfully positioned her as a trusted member of the working royal establishment, capable of undertaking significant responsibilities as opportunities arose. Princess Alice gave birth to 3 children during the early years of her marriage. Lady May Cambridge arrived in 1906, followed by Prince Rupert in 1907, and finally Prince Maurice in 1910. Each birth was carefully monitored given the family's hemophilia history, with particular attention paid to the health of the male children who might inherit the condition. The birth of Prince Rupert confirmed fears about hemophilia transmission. The young prince showed clear signs of the bleeding disorder, requiring constant supervision and limited activity. Princess Alice approached this challenge with characteristic determination, ensuring Rupert received appropriate medical care while maintaining as normal a childhood as possible given his condition. Lady May's health appeared robust, though she would later prove to be a carrier like her mother. The family's approach to parenting combined such a protective care with realistic acceptance of genetic limitations. Princess Alice demonstrated remarkable resilience in managing the emotional and practical challenges of raising children under such circumstances. Tragedy struck the family in 1910 when Prince Maurice died in infancy. The loss devastated Princess Alice and the Earl of Athlone, representing not only personal grief but also the reduction of the Albany line's future prospects. Infant mortality remained common even among royal families, but Maurice's death carried particular weight given the family's already precarious genetic situation. The family's mourning was conducted with appropriate royal dignity while allowing for genuine emotional processing. Princess Alice drew strength from her religious faith and the support of the extended royal family, who understood the particular challenges she faced as a hemophilia carrier. The tragedy deepened her commitment to her surviving children while reinforcing her understanding of life's uncertainties. Prince Maurice's death also emphasized the importance of Prince Rupert's survival for the continuation of the Albany male line. The pressure on the hemophiliac prince to live and potentially reproduce added complexity to an already challenging family situation. Princess Alice would need to balance protective instincts with realistic expectations about her son's future. Prince Rupert's hemophilia manifested in frequent bleeding episodes that required careful medical management and constant vigilance. Princess Alice became expert in the practical care required for hemophiliac children while maintaining hope for medical advances that might improve his prospects. The family consulted leading physicians across Europe, seeking the best available treatment options. Despite his condition, Prince Rupert received a thorough education adapted to his physical limitations. His intellectual development proceeded normally, and he showed particular aptitude for languages and history. The family encouraged his academic interests while accepting that traditional military or diplomatic careers would likely prove impossible given his health constraints. The prince's social development occurred within carefully managed parameters. Princess Alice worked to ensure he maintained appropriate friendships while avoiding activities that might trigger dangerous bleeding episodes. This delicate balance required constant adjustment as Rupert grew older and more aware of his limitations compared to healthy peers. In 1928, Prince Rupert died at age 21 following a car accident in France. The tragedy, while devastating for his family, was not entirely unexpected given his medical condition. Princess Alice had long understood that hemophiliac males rarely achieved normal lifespans, but the loss nonetheless represented the end of direct male succession for the Albany line through her branch of the family. Lady May Cambridge, later known as Princess May, after her father's elevation to Earl of Athlone, developed into an accomplished and independent young woman. Her education emphasized both traditional female accomplishments and practical skills that would serve her well in adult life. Unlike her brothers, she faced no direct health constraints, though she carried the genetic responsibility of potential hemophilia transmission. In 1931, Princess May married Captain Sir Henry Abel Smith, a distinguished military officer from a respected family. The marriage represented both personal happiness and dynastic continuity, as May's children would carry forward the Albany genetic line. The wedding celebration emphasized family unity while acknowledging the genetic challenges that would influence future generations. Princess May's children included 2 sons, both of whom inherited hemophilia, confirming her carrier status. Despite these challenges, she maintained active involvement in royal family responsibilities while supporting her husband's military career. Her approach to motherhood combined the protective instincts learned from Princess Alice with realistic acceptance of genetic limitations. The continuation of the Albany line through Princess May ensured that Prince Leopold's descendants would remain active within the British royal family structure. Her success in balancing personal happiness with dynastic responsibility demonstrated the possibility of meaningful life despite hereditary challenges. In 1924, the Earl of Athlone was appointed Governor-General of South Africa, beginning a distinguished period of imperial service for Princess Alice. The appointment represented recognition of both Alexander's military competence and Alice's proven ability to fulfill demanding ceremonial and social responsibilities. The couple's approach to viceregal life emphasized dignity, accessibility, and genuine engagement with local communities. Princess Alice's performance in South Africa demonstrated her capacity for significant royal responsibility. She managed complex social obligations while supporting her husband's political and administrative duties. Her approach combined royal formality with personal warmth, creating positive impressions among diverse constituencies within the Union of South Africa. The South African appointment was followed in 1940 by Alexander's selection as Governor-General of Canada, a position he would hold until 1946. Princess Alice's experience in South Africa proved valuable preparation for the even more demanding Canadian role, where wartime responsibilities added complexity to traditional viceregal duties. Her performance during this period established her reputation as one of the most capable royal representatives of her generation. Throughout both appointments, Princess Alice maintained active correspondence with the British royal family while adapting to local customs and expectations. Her success in these roles demonstrated the possibility of meaningful royal service beyond the traditional confines of British court life, establishing precedents for future royal involvement in Commonwealth governance. Following their return from Canada in 1946, Princess Alice and the Earl of Athlone settled into a pattern of reduced but continued royal service. Alice's experience and reliability made her valuable for specific ceremonial occasions where senior royal representation was required, but reigning monarchs were unavailable. Her later years were characterized by selective but meaningful public engagement. The death of King George VI in 1952 marked a significant transition for Princess Alice, who had served 3 monarchs during her adult life. Her relationship with Queen Elizabeth II reflected both family affection and professional respect developed through decades of competent royal service. Alice's institutional memory became increasingly valuable as the monarchy adapted to post-war realities. As one of the last surviving granddaughters of Queen Victoria, Princess Alice represented living connection to the Victorian royal tradition. Her longevity allowed her to witness the dramatic transformation of monarchy from imperial institution to modern constitutional framework. Her perspectives on these changes were sought by historians and royal observers seeking to understand monarchical evolution. The Earl of Athlone died in 1957, leaving Princess Alice widowed but financially secure and surrounded by a supportive extended family. Her final decades were spent in quiet retirement, though she continued to attend major royal occasions when health permitted. Her presence at family celebrations provided continuity and historical perspective for younger generations of royals. Princess Alice, Countess of Athlone, died on 3 January 1981 at the remarkable age of 97. Her death marked the end of direct personal connection to Queen Victoria's era, as she was the last surviving grandchild of the great Queen. Her funeral attendants included representatives of the various royal families she had served and befriended throughout her long life. Her legacy within the British royal family emphasized duty, reliability, and graceful adaptation to changing circumstances. Princess Alice had successfully navigated the transition from Victorian granddaughter to modern royal representative, demonstrating the monarchy's capacity for evolution while maintaining essential traditions. Her approach to royal service provided models for subsequent generations. The genetic legacy of the Albany line through Princess Alice continued through her daughter Princess May and subsequent generations. While hemophilia remained a challenge for male descendants, the family's approach to managing hereditary conditions had evolved significantly since Leopold's time. Medical advances and genetic counseling provided options unavailable to earlier generations. Princess Alice's contribution to Commonwealth relations through her viceregal service established important precedents for royal involvement in Dominion governance. Her success in South Africa and Canada demonstrated the value of experienced royal representatives in maintaining imperial connections during periods of political transition. Prince Charles Edward George Albert was born at Claremont House on 19 July 1884, nearly 4 months after his father's death. His arrival was both joyful and poignant, representing hope for the continuation of the Albany line while emphasizing the tragedy of Leopold's early death. The infant prince automatically inherited his father's ducal title, becoming the second Duke of Albany while still in the cradle. Queen Victoria took particular interest in her posthumous grandson, seeing in him both the continuation of Leopold's legacy and the potential fulfillment of dynastic obligations that extended beyond Britain. The prince's birth had been eagerly anticipated not only by the British royal family but also by German relatives who recognized the broader succession implications. The circumstances of Charles Edward's birth created unique pressures from the beginning of his life. As a posthumous heir to significant titles, his upbringing would be carefully monitored by multiple interested parties. The question of his eventual role in either British or German royal structures remained unresolved, though few could have anticipated the dramatic trajectory his life would ultimately follow. Prince Charles Edward's early years were spent at Claremont House under the careful supervision of his mother and Queen Victoria. His education emphasized British history and constitutional principles, preparing him for a life of royal service within the established order. German language instruction ensured he remained connected to his maternal heritage while firmly grounding him in British traditions. The young Duke's health appeared robust, showing no signs of the hemophilia that had affected his father. This physical soundness was celebrated by the family as ensuring his ability to fulfill whatever responsibilities might eventually fall to him. His childhood activities included writing, shooting, and other pursuits traditional for British princes. Regular visits to Windsor Castle and Osborne House kept Charles Edward connected to the broader royal family while emphasizing his special relationship with Queen Victoria. The Queen's affection for her grandson was apparent to court observers, though she remained conscious of the complex dynastic obligations that might eventually require difficult decisions about his future. As Charles Edward approached school age, questions about his education became increasingly complex. Traditional options for British princes seemed appropriate, yet his position as potential heir to German territories created complications that would require careful navigation. The family's approach emphasized keeping options open while providing excellent preparation for whatever path circumstances might demand. The death of Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, in 1900 created a succession crisis in the Duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. As Alfred's only son had predeceased him, the succession fell to the next male heir in the British royal line. Prince Arthur, Duke of Connaught, renounced his claim, leaving 15-year-old Charles Edward as the unexpected heir to a German duchy. The succession question required careful consideration of both legal precedent and political implications. German constitutional law demanded that the Duke reside in his territories and govern actively, requirements that would effectively remove Charles Edward from British royal life. Queen Victoria, despite her advanced age, remained deeply involved in discussions about her grandson's future. The decision to accept the German succession was not taken lightly by the family. Charles Edward's mother, Princess Helen, faced the prospect of losing regular contact with her son as he relocated to Germany. The young Duke himself had little voice in these discussions, though he would bear the consequences for the remainder of his life. International implications of the succession extended beyond family concerns. The appointment of a British prince as a German ruler carried diplomatic significance at a time when Anglo-German relations were becoming increasingly complex. Charles Edward's future would be shaped by forces far beyond his control or understanding. In 1900, 16-year-old Charles Edward left Britain to assume his position as Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. The transition required complete cultural and linguistic adaptation as he moved from British royal household to German court environment. His education was hastily revised to emphasize German history, law, and administrative practice necessary for effective ducal governance. The duchy itself consisted of two separate territories with distinct histories and administrative traditions. Coburg and Gotha were linked only through dynastic succession, requiring their duke to maintain residences and court establishments in both locations. For a teenager accustomed to the unified structure of British royal life, these complexities presented significant challenges. Charles Edward's German relatives provided guidance in his adaptation to continental royal customs, though significant differences remained between British and German approaches to monarchical responsibility. The young Duke was expected to take active interest in territorial administration while maintaining appropriate ceremonial dignity. His British upbringing had not prepared him for such direct involvement in governance. The cultural transition proved more difficult than anticipated. While Charles Edward spoke German fluently, his understanding of German social and political traditions required extensive development. His advisors worked to accelerate this process while ensuring he maintained appropriate relations with both his new subjects and the broader German royal establishment. Charles Edward's formal accession as Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha in 1900 marked the beginning of an active reign that would last 18 years. His territories, while small, possessed historical significance and required competent administration. The young Duke approached his responsibilities with characteristic British thoroughness. Though he lacked experience in continental political traditions, the ducal court at Coburg became Charles Edward's primary residence, though regular visits to Gotha maintained connection with his other territory. His household combined German administrative expertise with British organizational principles, creating a unique governmental approach that reflected his dual heritage. The Duke's British background initially created curiosity among his subjects, though his commitment to effective governance gradually earned respect. Charles Edward's early reign emphasized infrastructure development and educational reform, areas where his British experience provided valuable perspectives. His approach to ducal responsibility combined ceremonial dignity with practical attention to administrative detail. These characteristics would serve him well during the challenging political transitions that lay ahead. The international position of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha required careful diplomatic navigation as European tensions increased. Charles Edward's British birth created both opportunities and complications in his relations with other German rulers. His reign would be tested by circumstances far beyond the normal scope of small state governance. On 11 October 1905, Duke Charles Edward married Princess Victoria Adelaide of Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Glucksburg, a union that strengthened his position within German royal circles while providing personal happiness. The marriage represented careful dynastic planning, bringing together two Protestant German royal houses with compatible political interests. Victoria Adelaide proved an excellent partner for the demanding responsibilities of ducal life. Her experience in German court culture complemented Charles Edward's administrative competence, creating an effective partnership for territorial governance. The Duchess's social skills enhanced the court's reputation while supporting her husband's political objectives. The couple's first child, Prince Johann Leopold, was born in 1906, followed by Princess Sibylla in 1908, Prince Hubertus in 1909, Princess Caroline Matilda in 1912, and Prince Friedrich Josias in 1918. This substantial family ensured dynastic continuity while creating personal fulfillment for both parents. The children's upbringing emphasized both German cultural traditions and awareness of their broader European royal connections. Family life at the Coburg court combined formality with genuine affection, characteristics that reflected both parents' personalities. Charles Edward proved a devoted father despite the increasing pressures of political leadership. His children would later face the consequences of decisions he made during the turbulent years ahead. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 placed Duke Charles Edward in an impossible position between his British birth and German obligations. As a reigning German monarch, his loyalty to the German Empire was legally and politically required, yet this alignment inevitably meant opposition to his native country. The Duke's decision to support Germany marked the point of no return in his relationship with Britain. Charles Edward's wartime service included military duties appropriate to his rank and position, though his role remained largely ceremonial rather than operational. His territories contributed men and resources to the German war effort, while the Duke himself maintained public support for German objectives. These actions would later be characterized as treasonous by British authorities. The war's progression created increasingly bitter divisions between formerly connected royal families. Charles Edward's correspondence with British relatives ceased entirely as the conflict intensified, severing personal relationships that had maintained family unity across national boundaries. His choice of German loyalty over British heritage would define the remainder of his life. By 1917, the impossibility of maintaining dual loyalties had become apparent to all concerned. Charles Edward's position as a German duke fighting against his country of birth created an untenable situation that could only be resolved through formal renunciation of British connections. The duke's commitment to his adopted country would soon cost him his birthright. The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917 formally stripped Duke Charles Edward of his British royal titles and position in the line of succession. The legislation, passed specifically to address the anomalous situation of British princes fighting for Germany, marked the definitive end of his connection to the British royal family. He was no longer Prince Charles Edward, but simply Charles Edward, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. The loss of British royal status represented more than symbolic punishment. It severed relationships and opportunities that had shaped his early life. Charles Edward's name was struck from military roles, his appointments were revoked, and his ceremonial positions were redistributed among loyal members of the royal family. The action was comprehensive and irreversible. King George V's decision to support the deprivation reflected both political necessity and personal disappointment. The king had hoped for different choices from his cousin, but recognized the impossibility of maintaining family connections across enemy lines during total war. The formal break was painful but unavoidable given the circumstances. For Charles Edward himself, the deprivation confirmed his complete commitment to Germany while eliminating any possibility of future reconciliation with Britain. His response was dignified but unrepentant, emphasizing his obligation to his subjects and territories. The Duke would spend the remainder of his life justifying this fundamental choice. The German defeat in 1918 brought the collapse of the imperial system that had given meaning to Charles Edward's reign. Along with the Kaiser and other German rulers, he was forced to abdicate, ending nearly 2 decades of active sovereignty. The Duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha ceased to exist as an independent political entity, absorbed into the new German Republic. The transition from reigning duke to private citizen proved traumatic for Charles Edward and his family. Their social and economic position depended entirely on monarchical institutions that had suddenly vanished, leaving them to navigate an uncertain future without traditional sources of support. The Duke's British origin, previously a minor complication, now became a significant liability in Republican Germany. Financial arrangements following abdication provided modest security, but nothing approaching the resources of active sovereignty. The family retained some property rights while accepting the loss of territorial revenues and ceremonial privileges. Charles Edward's future would depend on his ability to adapt to dramatically reduced circumstances. The psychological impact of losing sovereign status proved as challenging as the practical consequences. Charles Edward had defined his adult identity through ducal responsibility, and the sudden removal of this role left him searching for new sources of meaning and purpose. His subsequent political choices would reflect this fundamental displacement. Following his abdication, Charles Edward attempted to maintain dignity while adjusting to private citizen status in the new German Republic. His family's social position remained elevated due to their aristocratic connections, though their political influence had vanished along with the monarchical system. The former duke's daily routine required complete reorganization around civilian rather than sovereign responsibilities. The family's financial situation, while not desperate, required careful management of reduced resources. Charles Edward's administrative experience proved valuable in managing family properties and investments, though he struggled with the transition from public to private concerns. His wife, Victoria Adelaide, provided crucial support during this difficult adjustment period. Social connections with other former German royals created a community of shared displacement and nostalgia for the lost monarchical order. These relationships would later prove significant as political movements emerged that promised restoration of traditional authority. Charles Edward's involvement in such circles reflected both genuine conviction and search for renewed relevance. The former duke's children adapted more easily to civilian life, though they remained conscious of their aristocratic heritage. Their education emphasized practical skills alongside traditional royal accomplishments, preparing them for uncertain futures in a transformed Germany. Family unity provided stability during this period of broader social upheaval. During the 1920s and early 1930s, Charles Edward became increasingly attracted to political movements that promised German national renewal and restoration of traditional authority. His support for right-wing organizations reflected both ideological conviction and personal desire to regain political relevance in the transformed German landscape. These associations would prove fateful as radical movements gained power. The former duke's political evolution was gradual but decisive, moving from monarchist nostalgia to active support for revolutionary nationalism. His British origins, previously a source of complexity, now provided credentials as someone who had sacrificed everything for German loyalty. Radical leaders recognized the propaganda value of his endorsement. Charles Edward's public statements during this period emphasized themes of national honor, traditional authority, and resistance to democratic chaos. His aristocratic background lent dignity to movements that appealed primarily to middle-class grievances and working-class frustrations. The former duke became a valuable symbol for anti-democratic forces. Family members expressed private concerns about Charles Edward's political trajectory, though few anticipated the ultimate consequences of his choices. His commitment to German nationalism appeared consistent with his earlier decisions, though the specific character of emerging radical movements created new moral complications that would soon become apparent. Charles Edward's relationship with the Nazi movement became increasingly close following their rise to power in 1933. His aristocratic background and British royal connections made him valuable for legitimizing the regime among conservative Germans and international observers. The former duke accepted various ceremonial positions that aligned him with Nazi policy objectives. His specific roles included involvement in organizations promoting German ethnic identity and international Nazi outreach efforts. Charles Edward's fluency in English and understanding of British culture made him particularly useful for propaganda directed at Anglo-Saxon audiences. These activities would later be characterized as treasonous collaboration with enemy forces. The depth of Charles Edward's ideological commitment to Nazi principles remains historically debated, though his public support was unequivocal. Whether motivated by genuine conviction, personal ambition, or simple opportunism, his association with the regime became comprehensive and highly visible. The former Duke appeared at Nazi rallies and supported policies that contradicted his earlier royal values. Family consequences of these political choices included strained relationships with children who questioned their father's direction. Charles Edward's daughter Sibylla, who married into the Swedish royal family, found herself defending her father's reputation while maintaining her own political neutrality. The former Duke's choices affected multiple generations of his descendants. The political trajectory of Charles Edward's later career created complex challenges for his children, who were forced to navigate the consequences of their father's choices while establishing their own adult lives. Princess Sibylla's marriage to Prince Gustav Adolf of Sweden in 1932 provided her with political distance from her father's activities, though questions about family loyalty persisted. Prince Johann Leopold and Prince Hubertus both served in the German military during World War II, reflecting family tradition and political necessity rather than ideological commitment. Their service record was distinguished but conventional, avoiding the political controversies that surrounded their father's civilian activities. Both sons maintained careful distance from Nazi party involvement. Princess Caroline Matilda married Friedrich, Count of Castel-Rudenhausen, creating another branch of the family that emphasized traditional aristocratic values over political radicalism. Her approach to family heritage emphasized cultural rather than political aspects of German identity, providing alternative models for maintaining dynastic dignity. The youngest son, Prince Friedrich Josias, came of age during the most extreme period of Nazi rule, creating particular challenges for maintaining family honor while meeting social expectations. His eventual military service was notable for its emphasis on traditional military values rather than ideological commitment to Nazi objectives. During World War II, Charles Edward's earlier political choices aligned him with German war objectives, though his role remained primarily symbolic rather than operational. His advanced age limited active involvement, but his continued public support for Nazi policies made him liable for post-war prosecution. The former Duke's wartime activities would define his historical reputation. The war's end in 1945 brought immediate consequences for Charles Edward and his family. Allied authorities classified him as a Nazi collaborator subject to denazification proceedings, though his age and limited wartime activities resulted in relatively lenient treatment. The family's properties were investigated but not extensively confiscated. Social ostracism somehow proved more damaging than legal consequences, as Charles Edward found himself excluded from the respectable society that had defined his adult life. Former friends and associates distanced themselves from his political record, leaving the aged Duke isolated and defensive about choices that had seemed reasonable decades earlier. The transformation of Germany into a divided nation occupied by foreign powers created additional challenges for the former Duke's final years. His identification with German nationalism became problematic in a country whose national identity was being fundamentally reconstructed by external forces. Charles Edward's political legacy would remain controversial for decades after his death. Charles Edward, the former Duke of Albany and Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, died on 6 March 1954 at Coburg at the age of 69. His death received minimal public attention, reflecting his marginalized status in post-war Germany and complete estrangement from British royal circles. The funeral was a private affair attended primarily by family members and local associates. Contemporary obituaries yet have struggled to assess Charles Edward's complex legacy, noting both his early promise as a conscientious ruler and his later political misjudgments. British publications emphasized his loss of royal status and wartime collaboration, while German sources focused on his service to Coburg and challenges of political transition. Few observers attempted comprehensive evaluation of his choices. The immediate family response to his death emphasized personal loss while acknowledging the controversial nature of his later career. Princess Sibylla's position within the Swedish royal family required particularly careful navigation of public statements about her father's legacy. Other children maintained dignified silence about political questions while mourning their personal loss. Historical assessment of Charles Edward's life was complicated by the broader context of 20th century European transformation. His trajectory from British prince to German duke to Nazi collaborator reflected larger patterns of royal displacement and political radicalization that affected numerous aristocratic families during the period. The historical judgment of Charles Edward, Duke of Albany and Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, remains complex and contested more than 70 years after his death. His life encompassed remarkable transformations in European politics and royal identity, making simple moral assessments inadequate for understanding his choices and their consequences. Modern historians emphasize the contextual factors that shaped his decisions while acknowledging their ultimate moral implications. Charles Edward's early career as Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha demonstrated competent territorial administration and genuine concern for his subjects' welfare. His approach to governance combined British organizational principles with German administrative traditions, creating effective policies that benefited his territories. This period of his reign earned contemporary respect and provides evidence of his capacity for positive leadership. The crisis of World War I placed Charles Edward in an impossible position between competing loyalties, ultimately forcing a choice that determined the remainder of his life. His decision to support Germany over Britain reflected legal obligations as a reigning German monarch, though it permanently severed his connection to his country of birth. This choice, while understandable given his circumstances, initiated a trajectory that would lead to increasing moral compromise. The collapse of German monarchy in 1918 left Charles Edward searching for renewed relevance in a transformed political landscape. His subsequent association with radical nationalism and Nazi collaboration represented a fundamental betrayal of the constitutional monarchy principles that had shaped his early training. These later choices overshadowed his earlier achievements and defined his historical reputation. In comparison to his sister Princess Alice, who successfully adapted to changing circumstances while maintaining her moral principles, Charles Edward's legacy appears particularly tragic. Both siblings faced the challenge of navigating 20th century royal identity, yet their divergent choices produced dramatically different outcomes. Alice's life of service and dignity contrasts sharply with Charles Edward's political radicalization and historical disgrace. The Albany legacy ultimately reflects the broader transformation of European monarchy during the modern period. Prince Leopold's children inherited substantial advantages and opportunities, yet their divergent paths demonstrate how individual choices can amplify or diminish hereditary benefits. Princess Alice's success and Charles Edward's failure provide contrasting models for royal adaptation to democratic modernity. The dynastic consequences of their choices continue to influence contemporary European royalty. Princess Alice's descendants remain active within British and Swedish royal circles, while Charles Edward's family has largely withdrawn from public prominence. The genetic legacy of hemophilia, which shaped the family's early concerns, proved less significant than the political and moral choices that defined their public reputations. Contemporary assessment of the Albany line emphasizes the importance of individual character in determining historical legacy. Despite shared heritage and similar early opportunities, Leopold's children chose fundamentally different paths that produced lasting consequences for their families and their historical reputations. Their stories provide valuable insights into the challenges of maintaining royal relevance while adapting to rapidly changing political and social circumstances. The documentary record of both lives demonstrates the complex relationship between personal choice and historical circumstance in shaping individual destinies. While external forces certainly influence their options, the fundamental moral decisions that define their legacies remain matters of individual responsibility. Their contrasting choices continue to provide lessons about the enduring importance of character in public life.